So hi, today the main topic is the app router and page router and SSG and CSR, SSR, those kind of thing in Next.js. Last video, I talk about the CSR and SSG and SSR. Those kind of thing is really the the rendering strategy in web development. But now, but now let's be really practical. Let's just say, well, we learn about SSG and CSR and SSR, but how do we really use this in our product, in our framework? Um, Inside Next.js, there you can use the some kind of a lot of feature, but mostly the rendering part you can just use SSG, CSR, and SSR. But I know there's more. There's like use like ISR, those kind of thing. But let's just focus on this three thing because three thing is most famous and representative of the rendering strategy. The first begin you to use the SSR and SSG and whatever um, SSR whatever stuff. Um, you have to learn. You have to think about why do we need Next.js. Well, we can just use SSG and CSR and SSR in the other framework. But why do we have to use? Why does a lot of people use Next.js nowadays? This is kind of what I really believe of like software development or software technology. Not only in the web development, the the technology and technology the the development of the technology it rapidly it rapidly increases nowadays, and the I think the most important factor is that the whether we face problem or not. Example, if you look at the operating system, before it was like the just the computer architecture without operating system. x86, ARM, whatever stuff, and we used um, the ASM language. And somehow um, we faced a problem that the hardware there was a limitation of increasing the performance, um, increased performance from the making the hardware making the hardware part um, more increased. I mean, like if there's more hardware performance, we think that there will be more perform the computer performance of it. But there's gonna be a limitation that the the how do I say it? The amount of increasing performance it decrease when it exceeds the somehow standard of it. So rather than focus on the hardware part, we also think about the software part. Not since using instruction, like using AS assembly language to make an instruction or program and then program could be easy could could be easy, but we trying to find more better way to make them to handle the memory management and the merge process, those I'm saying, and rapidly process changing and those kind of thing. So, and there's operating system, there's operating system, and the operating system the the technology also increased. And let's say also the database. We used before it was like I think it was like binary tree. There was a binary tree. Binary tree is that there's a tree, but the left part, the small part go to left part of the node, and the bigger part like it goes to the right part of the node. Example, if is this node is 3, and your target value to insert if it's like 2, you go left part because 2 is more than 3. But if it's 5, you insert on the right part. But however, since binary tree has a problem that it only can have two children, and also it could have only one children. Since if there's only one children, that means that it just seems like just the array, and the worst case time complexity is O(n). So when you're trying to use this binary tree as a DB indexing, the complexity is the O(n). So this is kind of slow, and we just have faced the problem that DB indexing is slow because the binary tree, the worst case O(n), and somehow if it's repetitive, we think that also that's kind of repetitive and there's a problem, and we have to fix it because that is tedious. And there's no such a thing of B3 and B plus 3 and whatever stuff. It's not only just the performance. I think it just the um, is really better to is there's like performance, but not only the performance. I think there's like it is very abstract, and it does face the problem that we face. Also, it is really good for the developing. If you only seek the if the technology only seek for the performance, uh, there's no real real made technology is because if it because the performance could be give bad effect on the developer experience. But whatever stuff. So the recap, like computer architecture, the era of computer architecture development, even operating system, even database, they 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 had a problem and they somehow fix it, and they made the abstraction layer that is abstraction layer that outside of those kind of area saying this is really actually simplified, but in the under the hood there's so many bunch of logic. Next.js web development is kind of similar. We try to use just plain HTML, CSS, JavaScript, but we find the problem. We use CSR, React, SPA, and CSR, and now this is kind of really bad because it could be tedious, and there's a little bit issue because you have to think about image, and you have to think about font issue. You have to think about the JavaScript chunk, the really big JavaScript chunk, and also you think about um, the SEO problem and lot of things. The Next.js is the one who wraps this kind of problem and make it really simplified as the outer part. So it's kind of real abstraction layer of it. Now, so back again. In Next.js, there's a two router part, app router and page router. App router, it uses SSR under the hood. So basically, app router is like abstraction layer of page router. So app router is basically use you don't have to think about rendering performance or rendering part. Let this handles automatically, even SEO. So app router is basically you don't have to think about the rendering perspective of it because under the hood it's doing SSR. It just handles the automatica for you. But the bad part is, from my experience, bad part is that it's really kind of hard to more be better web application because I'm trying to enhance the SEO. If you look at if I have to enhance SEO, I have to see the pre-built HTML when we build it. In the app router, since the default is the SSR, if I build it, there's no HTML. It's just a bunch of JavaScript. And of course, I cannot detect the SEO part when there's a bunch of JavaScript chunk on it. But the page router, and also if router default is server-side rendering, so you have to think about you also have to think about your if your business logic, how you integrate with the client side. Example, the window, local storage, and browser native web API. Those kind of thing is actually undefined at the first, because undefined because SSR is node, not browser. But what about page router? Page router isn't default is not server side. The page router is actually client side. So you don't have to you don't have to manually type use client on the top of your component. The page router default is the client, and when you're trying to build it, you can see the dry HTML, and you can also enhance render performance because there's a little bit obstruction than app loader. Most of people are saying that app loader way more better than page router because the server-side rendering is the server-side rendering makes your website more faster. It could be more faster because somehow we don't have to somehow the client application or client device could be slower than the normal user. If the client device is really slow, there's gonna be difference of it SSR between CSR, SSG with the CSR. But the thing you have to consider is, if it's a side product, you can use app router. But if it's like the company based the service, think about more about deeply because the page router is more convenient than app router. App router uses SSR. Well, so if your service got jackpot, you have to think about migration Buzzle into some kind of AWS or Cloudflare. App router before is SSR, so you cannot use the normal SS3 or CDN. Page router before is client side, so when you're trying to build it, there's only HTML, CSS, JavaScript, no server. If there's server, there's more costly, and you have to think about the CPU. You have to think about your server's hardware spec, and also you have to think about load balancing and whatever stuff. I think that is why it's really kind of hard to choose app router versus page router. But my generally recommendation is use page router if it's like really for the service. If you just really launch a service but not side project. But if you don't have like backend engineer, if you're just alone but want to do the backend part, just use app router because app router is kind of full stack friendly. So this is it. Have a nice see you next time. Bye bye.